So today, I just wanted to talk about what I've been seeing the last couple of years, and I'm sure a lot of you have been seeing as well. Just this tremendous increase in the amount of play that golf courses are receiving. Whether you're a public, private course, you're in New York, Texas, California, wherever, golf is booming, and we're seeing more and more. All right, so golf courses are booming, plays up. With that comes some new challenges or some old challenges that have just started to manifest maybe at a greater degree. Maybe earlier in the season, we're seeing more and more areas worn out. We're seeing backups on the first tee times being sold out weeks in advance. Golf's a popular sport, a popular activity in this kind of new normal that we're all living. What that looks like, from the NGF standpoint, you can see here just the increase from our historical rounds played throughout the U.S. and since 2000, which used to be our previous record high, we've now recently surpassed that this past year as far as the amount of play. So 2020 started out a little slow, especially in areas like here in the Northeast, but quickly caught up once people realized they could go out and play golf, and get some exercise, and golf courses were open, and that momentum continued through 2021, and by all indications, 2022 is going to be just as busy. So, with an influx of golf activity, especially golf carts. Maybe new golfers or old golfers that are once coming back to the game. We're seeing some of these problems, especially when we go through a wet year, like many of us faced this past year. But even during periods of dry, the cart traffic damage that manifests on golf courses can be pretty significant, and quite frankly, can persist for a number of weeks or even months, depending on when it occurs and how weak that turf grass is. So here's just a list of 9 different kind of items that I put together that really influence the amount of damage that can be inflicted by golf carts, and kind of how that relates to turf grass health and playability. So the first item up there is soil. So obviously, if you've got a wet soil, there's more potential for running, for soil compaction. If you've got very heavy, tight soil particles, you can suffer from compaction more so than if you have like a sandy loam type soil. So depending on the soil at your specific golf course, or maybe from hole number 2 to hole number 6, the amount of compaction can be quite different, and the amount of damage therefore. So that's why sometimes you might see where certain holes might be cart path only for extended periods of time, or have more ropes and stakes to try to restrict some of that play from concentrating in a very tight area. Or for example, why maybe a course across the street has their carts quickly after a rain event, and your course has to pull back and kind of hold on those carts for a little bit until things can kind of dry out. So soils is a big one. Turf grass type. Not every turf grass can recover the same. Some of the newer turf grass varieties we have, some of the more durable turf grasses can withstand traffic, and they can recuperate quicker than maybe some of these older grasses. So everything from there's differences among species of turf grass, but then there's also differences within that species. So that's another thing, as you're looking to maybe try to prevent or remediate some of these areas, that you'd want to maybe have on your radars. What do I have the best turf grass for my environment? And it really doesn't have to be super complicated. I mean, if your grass grows well, it's going to be able to grow out of traffic injury better than a grass that doesn't grow well. Okay, so just you don't have to be an expert in all the different species or all the different cultivars available. Height of cut. As we lower heights of cut, we get denser. We get denser canopies, so that's another one that can kind of influence how much traffic we can tolerate, fairways versus rough versus different areas of the course. time of year, this time of year, grass isn't growing very fast. December, grass isn't growing very fast. November, not very fast. So if we're putting traffic on these areas during certain periods of time, that traffic's going to last, weeks, months. So we just got to be very cognizant of when we're allowing golf cart traffic to hit our fairways and our course. Terrain, if you've got very steep slopes, even on a dry surface with limited traffic, you can have some issues. So whether it's injury to the turf from tire slippage or just running from low areas, collecting all the water after a rain event. Number 6, irrigation coverage. Now this really gets down to your ability to recover from damage. If you've got good irrigation or you have a good staff that can go out there and hit some of these really weak areas to make sure they have adequate moisture, you're able to grow out of these traffic issues a little bit better. Conversely, if you have too much irrigation, you can develop some of these wet spots. You can have more prone to rutting, to damage, diseases, things like that. Number 7, sunlight. Again, getting back to growing. If we've got areas of our course that get adequate sunlight, we're going to have a better growing environment and be able to really produce some high quality turf and grow out of some of these stresses. Number 8 there, trees, impact sunlight, but then also impacts below the ground as well. So we got to think about those tree roots. We also want to think about how we move through a golf course, how we play. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then number 9, golfer behavior. So whenever I'm on a golf cart and I'm playing golf, I'm driving in a way that's different than if I was working on a course versus when so it's kind of, you get it behind that wheel of the cart, you're thinking about, I'm going from here to there, and you're not really worried about a lot of things. So trying to, help educate or try to direct some of the golfer traffic to prevent areas from being worn out. So with all these different, items, each course is going to be different. So there is no one size fits all cart policy. So, one of the things that I get asked a lot about is, well, when should, courses on Long Island, restrict golf carts? Or when should they allow them to come back in the spring? And it can vary. It can vary from, 1 mile down the road to, the course right here. So it isn't something that is a hard rule just because it's, this temperature outside that means we should be playing golf and we should be using carts, full capacity without any care. So when we're talking about soils and the compaction and whether it's the rutting you can see on top of the surface or just that soil compaction below the surface, which is a little bit harder to see the instant issues. Ways to remediate that. We're back to simple things like aeration, solid time, hollow time, trying to reduce that compaction below the surface. Now, it doesn't mean that maybe all areas of the course are going to suffer from the same amount of compaction. So, just because you aerate maybe your fairways once a year doesn't mean that there's not room to aerate other areas 2-3 times a year. And target just those spots that really suffer from a direct traffic flow. You've got everybody funneling into the same spot. You want to make sure that you're able to keep that soil from becoming too compact. Or maybe it's considering doing something like a sand top dressing program to try to build a better soil environment that can resist compaction. So things like clay and silt, which are very fine soil particles, are going to be much more prone to compaction. They're going to, you can basically make like a concrete road, with those particles. Now, if you've got something like a sand, it resists compaction. It allows some pore space that roots can grow. We can allow water to move through. So if we have a very tightly packed soil, very prone to compaction, very heavy soil, those are the types of courses, or those are the types of areas that can maybe benefit from the sand top dressing program. And then, of course, if we've got water on the surface or just below the surface, drainage, the sand top dressing can help with the water infiltration, but eventually it's going to hit that native soil and sit there. And so making sure we have subsurface drain tile to move that excess water and we have good surface drainage, that we don't have a lot of these little bird baths, because surface drainage, number one, subsurface drainage, number two, as far as level of importance, okay? So when we talk about alleviating compaction in the soil, it doesn't have to be something super disruptive. It can be something like, doing a slicing, like this course is doing right here, to try to reduce some of the compaction. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that this is all you would have to do throughout the year. There might be benefits to doing a traditional core aeration, but if you're looking for tools or ways to promote a better growing environment for these really traffic-prone areas, something like this might be useful. Or, like I said, trying to build that soil to resist compaction from the beginning. And then, of course, you got to get that excess water away from your main playing areas or the areas where you've got a lot of car traffic. Okay, turfgrass type. As I mentioned before, not every turfgrass species is able to tolerate the same amount of traffic. But if you just step back and think in simplest terms, the grasses that grow the best are going to be able to outgrow whether it's traffic, whether it's some type of disease. So making sure you have a grass that's well adapted for your site, and when you're in need to either resurface, introduce some type of seed, that you're not just picking a grass because someone else picked it down the street or because you've heard this grass before. You're actually looking at some of the data. So what does that data look like? It can be pretty boring, but it's a lot of numbers. This is just a snapshot from some research at Rutgers looking at different bluegrass traffic. Basically, you can see, well, you probably can't see, but there's two columns. The turf grass under no traffic, and then under traffic. So looking at different cultivars, different varieties that will be released and selected. So options that you have from different seed growers, and just because the grass looks really good when there's no traffic, you can see kind of that separation of, okay, when it's under traffic, how much does it fall? And the take-home message is not all of them fall the same amount, okay? Some of them really take it on the chin. Same thing with bentgrass. Here's some data from a fairway traffic study at UMass. Looking at some different creeping bentgrass cultivars. There's some, for those of you in the back that probably can't see, there's some common options. T1, which has one of the highest, at least in this study, highest traffic tolerances, ability to withstand that golfer car traffic, compared to like an older type like a Penn Cross or like an L93, okay? So just another characteristic when you're looking to select different grasses. Here's what it looks like from a species level. This is some research done at Kansas State University looking at buffalo grass, Kentucky bluegrass, zoysia, and perennial rye. And you can see for the study, you can see the difference in the tire tracks here for rough height and fairway height. So there's a little bit of differences as far as throughout the year of that repeated traffic, that ability for that grass to withstand. And you can see that data early season, during the summer, late season. Now, Kansas obviously is a much different growing environment than New York. But if I was looking to maybe do some type of grass conversion in my course, this wouldn't be hard to set up in an area of my golf course a year, 2 years out before I'm going to make that decision of which grass I'm going to go with, and then use that as a kind of a help to make that decision, okay, under your site conditions, okay, and really get some good data, so you can make that best informed decision. Now, height of cut, this if whatever grass you do have on your course, making sure your heights are using those to your advantage with regard to traffic. So as we lower heights of cut, the density of turf grasses, we're able to maintain a higher density stand. And that's a very good benefit to trying to withstand against traffic. Now, just because we can lower and get more dense plants doesn't mean that we always want to keep lowering, because there's going to be a tipping point, obviously, where we go too low and we're going to stress out that plant in that environment, and it's not going to do as well. But making incremental adjustments. So if we're mowing at a very high cut, we see this a lot in in collars, high-cut collars, tend to not take the traffic, mechanical traffic of the mowers turning, the rollers stopping. As we lower those collars down, they tend to do better. Do that same principle with your fairways, or, for example, your rough. Okay, time of year, very simple. Don't need to really go over this. Grass is growing, you're going to be able to handle more traffic. Grass isn't growing, you're going to have longer lasting issues. Frost, especially shoulder seasons here, that's a big one. Kind of some courses have very restricted policies regarding frost, some don't. It's one of these kind of issues where it can be cosmetic primarily, or maybe in certain extreme instances, it can actually be more long-lasting. And cause, if your grass is already kind of pretty weak going into fall, coming out of winter, and you've put a lot of traffic on it, this might be the straw that breaks the camel's back. But if it's just frosted and you run something over it, a lot of times it's just going to be a little bit ugly. It's not necessarily going to be detrimental to the turf grass health. Okay, terrain, making sure that your golf cart governors are reasonable for your facility. Making sure that maybe certain parts of your course, you don't allow golf carts to travel, whether it's because of being prone to sliding, hurting a player or the equipment, or even maybe looking at some of the times of which you mow fairways, the direction in which you mow, things like that. As far as traffic goes, you got to be very cognizant. Irrigation coverage. Everybody would like a brand new irrigation system, but even the best designed irrigation systems, you might get 85% uniformity. So you're still going to have these areas that are getting too much water and not enough water. Okay, so you're going to have that need, especially if you like to run your course very firm and fast. You're going to have that need to do a lot of hand water to try to even out some of these areas. Because if you put drought-stressed turf under traffic, it's a whole lot worse than just a turf that maybe has adequate moisture and is receiving that same amount of traffic. So just because you have an older system doesn't mean that you just have to wait around to you get a new multi-million-dollar system. You can do some simple upgrades or periodic preventative maintenance, things like upgrading your nozzles every few years throughout your fairways to make sure that as those materials wear, that the spray pattern is going to be even. You're able to deliver the amount of water like that sprinkler was designed to do, versus just looking at it and saying, well, the water's popping up, it must be working. This time of year, as courses are starting to prime their irrigation systems or have started to irrigate, it's a great time to go through and do a kind of a self-check and see where your uniformity is. Take one area of your course, one tee, one fairway, go out there, see what that distribution is like. 50, 60%. Most courses, like I said, if it's a brand new system, 80, 85%. If it's older than that, it's a whole lot lower, okay? So being able to deliver an appropriate amount of water to maintain, a good, healthy standard turf is a great defense against a lot of traffic. Having the necessary manpower to go out there and hand water, so you're not just relying strictly on your automatic sprinklers, and you're able to go out there and deliver an appropriate amount of water to a small area. It's important. Using things like moisture meters to maintain kind of a reasonable level of moisture in the system, to monitor, to help make those decisions of, should I add water, can I go another day? So just doing like a self-check this time of year is a great practice. Leveling sprinkler heads, not just making them level with a shovel or an eyeball, but actually getting a level. Step meters aren't, we maybe should add a bubble level to our step meter, and then you guys can really start using those things. So, all right, moving on. Shady traffic. Shady sites don't do as well under traffic. Very simple. If the turf grows well, it's going to be able to withstand traffic. All right, so I like policies that try to encourage golf carts to be in the areas where the grass grows best. That's typically the fairways. Not very many courses have trees and fairways, but they love having them down the edges of the fairways or right there in the rough. So trying to help educate golfers to drive where it's green, not where it's dark, brown, shaded, all that stuff. So looking at things like doing some tree pruning in areas or root pruning. I'll show you what that looks like to try to limit the competition between the trees and the turf, especially in areas that are prone to a lot of traffic or that really come into play from a golfer standpoint. You want to have really good surfaces there. You don't want to be having something that is under stress because it's shaded or because it's trying to compete with moisture of the tree roots. Different turf grasses have different shade tolerances. This is something from one of our publications, just kind of looking from a species level. But then there's even differences within species as far as some of the different grasses' ability to tolerate a shadier environment. Things like POA does well in shade, and grass not as well, okay? That's why in so many areas of your course you see, maybe POA doing really, really well, and in other areas, maybe the bent grass does better. Having one consistent standard grass is always preferred as far as from a maintenance standpoint. It's a little bit more simplistic, but it's hard to do in practice when you have different growing environments. Shaded areas, the POA is going to do better. Trying to maintain a healthy stand of creeping bent grass under shade is a whole lot harder than a healthy stand of POA under shade. How do you understand how much shade you have? You can use different things like some of these smartphone apps, Sunseeker, Sun Surveyor. They use the camera on your phone. They use your GPS location on your phone, and they put these arcs up there to show exactly the path of the sun. You can look at different points of the year. You can go out there on a day like today and understand where that sun's going to go. You don't have to wait around for the sun to peek out behind the clouds. Using tools like this to help guide some of your tree removal programs or the pruning of trees can be helpful. I want to take off that branch because it buys me an hour more of sunlight. So you can go out there and be very precise in how you're going to trim trees. All right, don't worry just about what's above ground. You got to think about what's below ground too. Tree roots, they can really hinder turf grass growth. They can really hinder drainage. They can do a lot of things. You put golf carts in the mix too. It's just one more issue that the turf's got to try to overcome. Not to mention the shallow tree roots that some of the species that grow well in this environment can cause to the actual golf cart. The damage they can cause to the cart, the damage they can cause to your elbow or wrist, and you're swinging through and you unsuspectedly hit one of those shallow tree roots. I really like this piece of machinery here, the Emmett's root pruner. This PTO-driven device here cuts two slits. You can barely even see them on the photo here. Two slits, so that way the tree roots don't fuse back together, which sometimes they do. So you got the very little cleanup. This is a picture I snapped of course I was working with in Dallas doing it mid-season, and that's the tee, that's the machine right there. So like you can get really close to greens, you can get really close to fairways. Like I said, very limited cleanup, if any. Just have to know where your irrigation lines are, and have a tractor that has a creeper here. Here's of course doing it in kind of the off season in Texas. If you are going down and root pruning your fairways, I would avoid plowing in a straight line, because once things do start to green up, and once you do go under drought stress, you're going to have a light area and a dark area. And when you're standing back on the tee, it's going to look pretty distracting and say, what do they do there? What do they not do there? So, following your fairway contours, or getting somebody out there that kind of, really doesn't drive straight to operate that tractor, that's preferred. Because this is what it can look like. Okay? It can be a stark difference. All right, traffic flow. Kind of getting into that golfer behavior. You know, how people get in the golf cart and they play the course, how they move through the course. I mean, everybody's guilty of it to a certain degree. You know, you're thinking, okay, I hit my ball there, I gotta go there, straight line. Yeah, I'm gonna avoid a bunker, yeah, I'm gonna avoid that tree. But other than that, you're just driving in a straight line. So we've got to kind of help to you know, maybe highlight some of these weak areas or to try to protect them before they get worn out. But if we're putting out ropes and stakes, they're no good if we leave them there all year long. We got to be able to move them around as needed. I've seen courses do an extreme, you know, kind of level of roping and staking and create more problems because all they do is concentrate the traffic and they don't come around to move them before those areas are worn out. Or it becomes so confusing from a golfer standpoint. Sometimes removing all those things and just kind of letting people go out and play, it might be actually better than having too many of them. You know, some of the newer golf cart technology allows you to kind of set up some of these geofences, but again, if you don't rotate those as needed, you can cause some pretty big issues. Self-inflicted issues. Traffic flow, here's an example of, you know, trees and traffic flow. When you're looking at your course and thinking, okay, I'm teeing off here, I'm going down the path, and I'm gonna, you know, hug a left here to get on to the fairway. If you've got trees every 15, 20, 30 feet, all you're doing is concentrating that traffic, all that golf cart traffic into these kind of, you know, little off-ramps. Taking out some of the trees so you can actually, you know, see, well, grass is green there because no one wants to, you know, get too close and crash into the tree. So if you didn't have this tree-lined area, the trees between the cart path and where that fairway is, if the trees were on the other side of the cart path, wouldn't be an issue, because everybody's wanting to turn the other way. So making sure you think, well, I want to have some trees down my fairway, but maybe you don't want to have them at the point where you want golf carts to go on the fairway, and where you want them to come off the fairway. Near the greens. Here's you know, a course that you know, basically has a fence of trees, and if they were expecting, you know, carts to try to enter and exit, you know, on this right side, which obviously they don't on this course, but you know, you can imagine how quickly that turf would go from green to bare ground, because you would just have the same ruts going in the same exact spots. All right, so some areas are obvious to understand where your traffic patterns are. Sometimes it's a little bit harder unless you sit out there and watch, you know, play all day long. There are options though you can use to try to better understand how golfers move through your property. And it's not just the ones on golf carts, it could be everybody, the walkers as well, the ones that take a pull cart or, you know, push cart. So we have an option with the USGA where we basically work with courses to provide them with individual little GPS loggers, which you can see here, that says golf ball, and allows them to understand where each golfer goes throughout their round. And so you can really better, this is basically what we ship out to the courses, these little loggers, they go right in your pocket, clip to your belt. Honestly, once they're on, golfers forget they even have them on. And then all that data that is collected from the unit with some survey data, looking at things like, okay, gender, playing ability, like a handicap index, did they ride, did they walk, some very general kind of, you know, survey demographic information allows us to overlay on your property exactly where golfers go and where they don't go. And right here is an example of a heat map that can be generated with that data. So the warmer colors, the reds, are where there is a high concentration of activity. So you can kind of see, you know, where the greens are. You can see where the tees that are most used to play. And then the cooler colors are where less play happened. No colors, zero play. So we send out 200 of these individual devices and we collect 200 different rounds of golf. And this can be used to highlight, you know, areas where we can adjust our maintenance practices. Maybe the spots that are really cool or don't come into play at all, maybe we don't aerate those every year. Maybe we don't put the same level of fertilizer down in those areas. The areas that are the red, that are weak points, those are the areas we're going to spend a lot more time focusing. Whether it's hand watering, whether it's applying nitrogen, which is very expensive these days, whether it's going out and doing some of those kind of targeted aeration. You can zoom in with it, kind of get a little bit greater level of detail. So that's one option. If you have GPS-enabled carts, you can probably get some kind of data from there, at least the way the carts move. You won't have the benefit of getting where the walkers go, all play goes. But trying to whatever you can use to better understand these are my weak areas at the end of the season, going around and snapping a picture. After you've gone from your 15,000 annual rounds to 22,000 annual rounds, I'm sure you have some new spots or some greater spots that are showing some wear and tear, and just documenting those so that way the following year you can do a little bit more intense management in those spots to try to prevent those from wearing out. All right. With managing traffic flow, I try to keep it as simple as possible. Whenever golfers would ask me, I'd say drive where it's green, except on the greens and tees, and go from there. So if it's green, the grass is presumably healthy, right? If it's not so green, probably a little bit stressed. Now, if that works to a certain degree, but there's a lot of courses where they say, well, that policy isn't going to work. We're going to have to use some level of ropes and stakes. We're going to have to communicate some type of direction to our players. But try to keep it as simple as possible. I really despise the 90-degree rule because no one likes driving and stopping and turning at 90 degrees. And if you try to do a 90-degree turn on turf, you're going to cause some issues. So the whole 90-degree rule is, I think, pretty ridiculous, honestly. But there's all different kinds of strategies to try to manage flow, right? Using little simple signs. Things like this, though, really, really important, not so much for a member club, maybe more important for a public course or a member club that's hosting a public event, some type of outside outing, some type of tournament. When you get on a club and you've never been there before, it's not that necessarily these people are trying to cause damage. They just might not, they don't know where to go. They drove the wrong side of the green, and they're not going to go back and retrace. They're just going to try to make their way through that wrong side of the green and go between the bunker and your green, 5 feet off. So one policy or strategy I've seen kind of work well in Texas when I was there was kind of this gate method. So basically, this course, Lakewood Country Club in Dallas, they traditionally had a post where they would put where they would want golfers to drive and enter the fairway. Okay, well, in Texas, warm season grasses, like you can see the reeder grass here in the off season, they don't grow well in the winter. Okay, courses like Lakewood that have really large live oak trees all up and down their fairways, and they're pretty tight playing corridors. And golfers often hit these trees and are going to look for their balls, kind of in that area between the fairway and the tree line. They're driving back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, looking for their ball. They want to try to correct that, especially in the off season. So, the back and forth part they wanted to correct, but they also wanted to correct the part of people always going in between the trees, leaving the cart path and trying to enter the fairway 250 yards up where their tee ball presumably landed, versus maybe entering in, early on where there weren't any trees, the grass was much healthier. So instead of just having a single post, which basically allowed golfers to say, okay, you saw the post, now you can enter in the fairway any point from now up until the green that you want. They put the second post there, what they call their gate method, and so now it's, hey, drive between these two posts, get in the fairway, stay in the fairway the entire time until you see two other posts. That's when you go out. And so they're able to try to limit the crossing into the fairway between tight tree lines. So they've got, they're correcting that issue, and they're also trying to correct the issue of the back and forth. I'm looking for that ball, where'd my ball go, in an area that the grass doesn't do well. put them in the fairway where the grass is still dormant, but it's a whole lot healthier. It can withstand. It's a lower height of cut, greater density. It's a better growing environment because that's where our irrigation sprinkler coverage is better. It's an area that gets full sun during the summer, so that's worked for them quite well. When you're replacing cart paths, you're looking at the design, having areas that come to an abrupt dead end like this, all that means is carts are going to drive straight in that path. Having areas that kind of swoop allows people to kind of come off and basically merge onto the fairway at different points. Having a rounded end encourages that dispersion a little bit better than just having that standard width cart path come right to a dead end. So all you're going to do is just create a runway where people think subconsciously that's what they're supposed to do. They're not really putting a lot of thought process. So you got to use these kind of strategies, very subtle, but it'll help you in the long run. Trying to do whatever kind of rolled curbing you can. I always hate where golfers think that by pulling off to the side that they're doing a good thing, or they're pulling off to the side of the highway so more traffic can pass faster. Look, the only person that's going to pass is maybe a maintenance cart, maybe a beverage cart. That happens maybe once around, a couple times around, and those people can let them be the ones to pull off. Keep all four tires on the path when there is a path, especially in your greens and tees. So doing really subtle curbing can help, versus maybe having to put up a whole bunch of ropes and stakes that look kind of a little bit off-putting. Getting away from this idea of single cart policy, or single rider policy that some people seem to fall in love with in 2020. One good thing I guess about having so much play is we've only got so many golf carts at a lot of courses. So this is kind of corrected with the high increase in play. But this time of year, stick to your club's policy as far as if you require two carts or two bodies in the cart, make it happen. And then do what you can to try to promote walking. I mean, golf was a game designed for walking. And trying to change the culture of clubs, trying to promote that, whether it's through caddy programs, whether it's through the ability of having push carts on site, free for use. I know for a period of time there was kind of a stigma where, well, if we have a pull cart, trolley, whatever you want to call them, it's kind of, that's a meanie thing. We're a country club, we don't have that. Getting away from some of those kind of old, outdated mindsets. How can you promote walking to your course? Like I said, having a caddy program, having some of these other options available is great. Or you can do something like what Southern Hills did after their renovation. And you'll get to see the course here in a few weeks on TV during the PGA Championship. But after the renovation that they did there a couple years ago, they made a dramatic change in their cart policy. And on the championship course, which I showed you a photo of, they only allow one group to have golf carts per hour. Okay? So from between 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock, only one foursome getting carts. Between 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock, only one foursome's getting carts. And it's interesting how at first, they went along with that policy, or some, I think, went along with that policy thinking, well, this is temporary after the renovation. This is something just to kind of let the grass, come get really healthy. We just spent all this time and money rebuilding our course. We want to have it really, really good. And, the thought was, well, we'll do it temporarily because, we want the grass to be healthy, and then we're going to have to open it back up because we want people to play. Well, they quickly found out that they did just as much play when they restricted that cart usage. In fact, they had even more play than what they historically did when they didn't. A lot of that was the renovation success. But it's a hilly course. I've been out there, I've played it. It gets very hot in Oklahoma, a lot hotter than it does here. So it's not it's July, now we're gonna let all the carts go out of here. No. Now they have the benefit, they have two courses, right? So if they have somebody that is just dead set on always riding, they can do that. And they have that option where if you want to play and have a cart round, that's the hour slot, you got it. it's interesting the amount of pressure by fellow members when they have a 38, 40-year-old member that's taking carts, and the person behind them, 65, 70, and they're standing on the team going, oh, you're taking carts, you're not. It's kind of a little bit of a self-policing, kind of people feel guilty, like, I'm only going to take a cart if I really need to take this cart. They also have signs like this in the pro shop that talk about kind of the importance of walking for golf and that connection. And so I like the one at the end there at the Tiger Woods. I played on a broken leg, so when people are saying that they need it because of some type of injury, I mean they really pressure the membership, and they've changed the culture. And honestly, probably the biggest resistors to the policy, or one of the biggest hurdles they had to overcome, was the golf shop staff. Russ, the superintendent, I mean, he was very adamant. There was buy-in from his green committee. There was buy-in from the board level, obviously, and some of the biggest naysayers were the golf staff, because they said, well, one, we're going to lose rounds. We're not going to be able. Well, that totally didn't hold up. And then it became quickly, well, what am I supposed to tell Mr. So-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so that they can't take a cart? I said, well, you tell them, here's the policy, this is what everybody's voted on, this is what we're doing. So I'm just supposed to tell them no? And it's like, yes, that's what you got to do. Sometimes you got to tell them no. I mean, it's not your policy, Mr. So-and-so, it's the club's policy. So anyway, big extreme, but it can be done. All right, just to wrap up, golf cart issues not going away, obviously, in America. Golf carts and golf are synonymous. And quite frankly, with the amount of play that we're receiving this past couple of years, these issues are just going to continue to show up. And some of the cumulative effects, maybe it didn't show up in the first year, but 2-3 years of running at such a high level, we're going to see some weaknesses in our golf courses. And so making sure we can target those and really put our resources towards those areas to maintain an acceptable level of play. If you aren't a member or receiving our Green Section record, I encourage you to sign up. You can do it right now on your phone. I know you got your phones all on silent, but you can text Green Section, just one giant word, Green Section, to 22828, and you'll get a prompt to enter your email. And you can get some of the different resources, whether it's golf cart policies or some ways to alleviate traffic, any kind of course maintenance type documents that we produce. This is what they come out through. And then that's my contact information up there, cell phone and email. So I'm happy to field any questions you have, maybe right now if there's a minute or two, but don't hesitate to give me a call, shoot me an email. Happy to help any way I can, and just want to wish you all the best of luck for this year. Hopefully it's just as busy, but the golf course holds up even better than last year. So, thanks so much for your time.